Okay, so I've just got finished with a ton of stuff on my new book, 72 Essential 251 Lines, and it's chock full of great ideas, just like this drill that I just played for you. So that's what we're doing today. Stay with me. I'm coming back for the breakdown. So the flow drill that I played earlier on in this video is based on 4 different 4-bar minor 251 patterns, where I'm using different approaches on each one of these patterns to get the effect I'm looking for. So if we look at this first pattern, it goes. So what I'm using on that is, instead of thinking of like the 2 chord and then the 5 chord, I'm just thinking about the 5 chord. So the chord's a C minor 7 flat 5 to F7 altered. And I'm really thinking about the F7 altered, specifically the F7 flat 13. So if you look at the ideas of what I'm playing, here the 5 going down to the 3, and then up to the flat 13 down to the root. Nice melodic statement, but we're using that wide interval pattern of a minor 6 descending there. And then when I go up that F7 into the B flat minor major 7 chord, I'm really kind of outlining a fragment of the Mixolydian flat 6 scale. So then I go into the B flat minor major 7 chord by a half step above, so chromatic approach from above. Using that double chromatic approach back down to the flat 3, then up to the 5, then diatonic below, and then a diatonic above, and then into the root. So remember that over that B flat minor, which is really outlining a B flat minor major 7 chord that we have there. So that's very cool. When we move into the second line, what I'm using there is an F diminished scale, the F symmetrical diminished, which is half step, whole step. And I'm starting it on a B, which is a tritone below the root. And it really works out cool because it's like. And what that's giving you over that, when I'm starting here, notice how that's outlining that C minor 7 flat 5 perfectly. So again, so into the flat 3, diatonic below, diatonic above, or chromatic below and diatonic above, both functions there. Just going down the minor triad here to diatonic below into the 5th, the natural 7, or I could look at that as chromatic below, double above, or diatonic below, double above. Many possibilities of the way you can analyze this. And but it's really, if you think about it, I'm using chord tones, I'm using chromatic approach notes and diatonic approach notes. That's all that's going on there in that whole thing. So really cool idea with the diminished scale over both the 2 and the 5, the way that works. So when you kind of figure out these patterns, you're looking to kind of then put them together from one to the next. So when I'm going here, see the effect, it just like really elongates where you're going with this, and it teaches you a lot more about your fretboard as well, because even though that might look pretty straightforward, that's not as straightforward as it looks. And many of my students would have that same realization. They'll watch me play something like that, even I'm not playing at a fast tempo, but then they would go and learn that and go, wow, that's not easy. That's hard to do. That's hard to navigate, to know where I'm at and moving in different areas of the fretboard for different dynamic effect. So when we go into the third one, this is a very cool approach where you're basically superimposing a minor major 7 chord over the 2 minor 7 flat 5, a minor third above. So if we have C minor 7 flat 5, I'm going to take an E flat minor major 7 chord and I'm going to superimpose that over the chord. It's a little bit of a hack for the playing over the minor 7 flat 5 because a lot of people have problems playing over that chord. Something about that flat 5 in there that trips people up. So two solutions. One is that you work harder on your minor 7 flat 5 chords. The second one is that you learn a couple of superimposition ideas that you can place over it, so it gives you a little bit more vocabulary, opens up that vocabulary a bit, and spreads it out across more of the things that you already know. So if I'm here, I have this line. Again, I'm just playing the same ideas, chord tones, chromatic approach notes, diatonic approach notes. But notice how this outlines the lower structure of that E flat minor chord, and then it leads me by half step. This is where I'm using voice leading, which I go into in the new book, which you got to check out. And voice leading is a cool concept which enables you to move from one line to the next by either a half step or whole step. So I'm coming in here and going into this diminished pattern by using diatonic approach notes. And that pattern you can see in my chord tone mastery book. It's a very kind of typical pattern, but you're going like a diatonic above into the third. Then I'm going up to the fifth, and then the flat 7. And then I'm going diatonic above into the fifth. Then I'm going up to the flat 7 and the flat 9. So you can really stretch those ideas out over your fretboard because they're all symmetrical patterns when you're thinking about that flat 9 chord. Then it goes into the B flat minor major 7 chord where I'm playing this idea, which is very cool. Again, just using the same kind of ideas. Very nice over that. Gives me a cool outline for that chord there. Now in the next 2-5-1 pattern, what I'm doing is I'm doing another one of those superimposition hacks where I'm taking an A flat 7 chord and superimposing it over the first chord, which is C minor 7 flat 5. So if you look at the C minor 7 flat 5, I've got the root, the flat 3, the flat 5, and the flat 7. But in relation to the A flat 7, that's going to be the 3, the 5, the flat 7, and the 9. So it's really important to understand how these chords overlap so you can think of different ideas of playing over them. So here I'm taking a real, almost cliche bebop lick, chromatic approaches descending, ends up on the 9 chord, which is a chromatic approach note above the next chord tone, which is going to be the A in the F7 chord. Again, so notice the voice leading there. From here, what I'm doing is I'm playing a whole tone pattern and finishing that off with a chromatic above, chromatic below into the 5th of the B flat minor chord. Now, over the B flat minor chord, what I'm using here is a cool little pattern. is based on this minor pentatonic scale, which a lot of people don't see. Coltrane used to use this all the time. It's got a really interesting sound. I've heard Patitucci using this a lot too. And I really like this scale. If you think about that in terms of the normal minor pentatonic scale, you have this, but that's really diatonic to its relative major pentatonic. But when you look at this, that's more of like a melodic minor pentatonic that you've got there. And I love that sound where you're using the 9 and that natural 13. And it can be applied over loads of different things. Very cool idea. So that whole line, that really bluesy kind of sound to the end of that, and kind of bringing it back to the listener. This is very, very cool. So what you can see from all this stuff is that this approach really starts opening up all your different options for developing your ideas over a much larger form. This is the whole point of this stuff. And this is where it's going to really take your playing and just nudge it along to, that next point that you really need to be getting to. The other approach doesn't work. When you're looking at just taking isolated licks and trying to piecemeal those things together on the fly, very often you're not going to have success with this. And I know that you're watching this and you've already tried this methodology and it basically doesn't work. It might seem like it's working in the practice room, but it actually doesn't work. You've got to start putting these drills into flow patterns. You've got to chain the ideas from one thing to the next, from one thing to the next. I kind of copped onto this concept through my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu training. That's the way they train. They will not just teach you one technique where you then have to then get on the ground and spar and somehow out of that chaos try to insert that one technique somewhere. It doesn't work. How do you do it? In your drills, you have to chain patterns together. It's the same thing here. So it's very efficient. I want you to check this out, and I know you're going to really dig this. We tend to hear music as we hear it at any given time in our development. That's what makes us all unique. Now, there's a great deal of practical information on improvising laid out for you to practice and assimilate in my new book, giving you the practical developmental tools while extending your musical journey with perpetuity. Until next time, practice smart, work hard, and play creatively.